Virtuozzo Hybrid Infrastructure allows you to conveniently deploy new virtual machines. With Storware Backup and Recovery, you can also now protect them with just a few clicks. In this video I'm going to give you a short overview what is possible with Storware Backup and Recovery. Let's start with logging into the Storware Backup and Recovery. The very first screen is the dashboard. Storware Backup and Recovery supports a wide range of different sources, so in the protection stats you can actually see that it's not only about the virtual environments, storage instances or cloud like Office 365, but also the applications running inside these environments. Now, in my case, I'm going to start with the configuration wizard. That's usually what you do after installing Storware Backup and Recovery. Just you can specify the time zone, your language. If you have running nodes, right, like I have already one in my case, I'm already able to connect that to the Virtuozzo environment. Now this is the place where you choose to configure a new source. Virtuozzo is here on the left on the virtual environments list. Then you can click next, and here you type in the URL. So it should be in such format, so you should give the IP or host name of your controller of the Virtuozzo. Then there should be a port 5000 and /v3. So this basically corresponds to your keystone authentication service inside Virtuozzo. Then you provide the username and password. So if, let's say, I would like to connect to it with some arbitrary password, then you just need to provide the region, like let's say region 1. If you have multiple, then you can select multiple regions in this case, so you can provide different credentials for each region, and then you assign node configuration. Notice that I have only one node with one node configuration, but I can have a group of nodes covering bigger environments that Virtuozzo is able to offer. All of them would have common settings and would use the same set of backup destinations, but you can have a separate node configurations covering just parts of your infrastructure. So once you have selected the interface type, you would create such hypervisor manager. This is how we call this in the Storware Backup and Recovery. Then, well, because I have already defined it, I don't want to redefine it again. I can skip it and go to the backup destination section. In backup destination section, notice that I have file system synthetic backup destination, but it offers actually the wide range of settings, especially that you can use basically plain storage and attach it over NFS 4.2 or XFS on your node. This also gives you faster recovery because all of the incremental backups are already merged during the backup process, so they don't have to be merged during the recovery. Anyway, you may have already other backup providers and you would like to integrate your Virtuozzo and store backups, let's say in the Dell Avamar, maybe you have IBM Spectrum Protect or some object storage running, let's say Swift or S3. That's also possible with the Storware Backup and Recovery. I choose file system in this case and synthetic, that's the common choice, and because I'm using Virtuozzo, this will not be used for cloud. Cloud has quite a separate set of the settings, so I need to distinguish if the intention here is to be used for cloud or not, and then I need to specify a backend. DDBoost is also supported as the backend, so it also allows us to create synthetic backup provider, and then I just give it a name, and optionally I can enable deduplication. If I have a plain device, we can initialize it a video with that, and I can specify in which path is going to be mounted on the node. We can skip the pre-access command execution or post-access command execution because this usually it's not required. You can use it for customized workflows such as dynamic mounting of the volumes with your custom scripts. Maybe you would like also to execute replication at some point. That's also doable. I also have backup destination. I have actually S3 prepared for this one, so I can also skip that. SLAs, we are going to cover that in a moment. This is also the place where you can have a backup or snapshot management or recovery plans already created using the wizard, but you can also create that manually later. We also encourage you to configure internal database backup. This is essential for having all of the configuration and metadata being kept safe on your backup destination, so there is a built-in mechanism that allows you to do that just from this wizard. You again need to specify which node config is going to be used, where to store these backups, according to which policy, and according to which schedule. We can skip it for now. Now, in my virtual environments, this is a central point where I'm going to have all of the instances and configuration related to my Virtuozzo environment. So notice that I have Virtuozzo running in here, and I have few virtual machines already running in this environment. So I need to invoke inventory synchronization. It's also being done automatically, periodically, like every 8 hours, but it can be changed. And notice that I have my Virtuozzo configured in here. Manually, I would just select here Add Hypervisor Manager, and I would define Virtuozzo like any other hypervisor manager. So again, URL, region, username, password. Optionally, if you have multiple domains being used, you could also use that and configure it from here. And this is the place actually where you also are able to invoke inventory synchronization. It is a task. Task is being processed by the node. So node as a data mover, you can have multiple nodes actually running in your environment, is responsible for processing these tasks. So it connects to your Virtuozzo environment and gathers all of the necessary information. That includes obviously the storage that you have available. You have instances, you have flavors, networks, projects, etc., etc. So the task is being invoked right now. It collects all of this information, and now in the instances here, I'm able to see Virtuozzo virtual machines. Again, all of these that you have seen in the Virtuozzo environment. Let's run some backup. I'll use full backup just because this virtual machine is a small one, and run. For Virtuozzo, we support also incremental backups, so that's also possible. Remember just to assign at least one incremental schedule in your policy. We need to know ahead that if your intention is to if you want to track the snapshots and leave them on your hypervisor for future incrementals, or are we supposed to remove it just after the backup completes? Backup is running. Remember that this is a two-step process, so first the data needs to be exported and later it needs to be stored in some backup destination. So if you have synthetic backup provider, there is actually an option, actually it's for file system backup destinations, there is an option to have a staging space be configured together with the backup destination. This two-step process suddenly is boosted, so you don't have to wait for the additional data copy, so the data movement between the staging space and the backup destination, I mean the copy of the data, but the data would be just moved to the different folder and it would speed up your backups in general. So that's only possible with the file system backup destinations. Inside the details of the instance, notice that I have some statistics about the data activity, the backup statistics, especially transfer rates may be of your importance, restore statistics if they have been already executed, and especially it's important to have backup time view because it also allows you to easily track if there are some bottlenecks. Maybe your upload to your S3 bucket is taking most of the time of the backups and not just the export of the data from the Virtuozzo. At the bottom, notice that I have some backup history, restore history, snapshots if they are left on the hypervisor and if they are being used for future incremental backups. Optionally, I can exclude some disks. And I can schedule, change the schedules inside the policy. So this is what effectively is assigned to the instance. This one has incremental schedule assigned. In the settings, for backup consistency, you may want to use pre-post access remote command execution so that we can use the SSH or any supported protocol like the WinRM, for instance, for Windows instances, and execute custom script or command to quiesce your database before the snapshot takes place. In the infrastructure, I have already mentioned that we scan for additional artifacts. So here you can see that my Virtuozzo actually has, it's a small environment, it has only one hypervisor. It has one cluster, this one is called Nova. Storage, the default one, is also used by the Nova. Networks are being scanned. Projects, in this case I have only admin projects. Flavors, quite important because it allows us also to change the flavor during the recovery. Access keys, and quite cool feature are quotas. Because we know ahead list of the projects, we can optionally limit that the restores for the individual projects are as follows. So soft or hard. Total number of backups. Soft means basically that you are going just to inform administrator that the limit has been reached, while the hard basically prevents you from doing another backups. So it allows you to limit per project the specific number of activities from the backup perspective, which may be put quite significant workload. I already have my backup completed. Now let's invoke the restore. Again, I'm going to filter out by the instance type, by the hypervisor manager, and here I'm able to execute restore to the file system. That's usually if you would like to have a deep dive and maybe you would like to play with the disks of the virtual machine without restoring it back to the hypervisor, but usually you would like to have a new instance being restored. So in the restore window, you specify which backup. It can be also in multiple locations, so it also comes with the location in the brackets, where and to each cluster or availability zone in the Virtuozzo nomenclature, and restore project name. Optionally, you can specify the name and invoke the restore or customize few things. You can specify to which storage you would like to import. We have actually one in this case. Networking, you have to map all of the interfaces, or you can change the flavor, as I already said. You can also use custom access keys if you would like to use administrative access to your instance. And now I invoke restore. So this eventually is going to create me an instance here in the Virtuozzo environment. So first we need to recreate the volumes. Once the volumes are recreated, we can spawn a new instance. In the meantime, let's talk about backup SLAs. Backup SLAs allow us to do whatever I have just did automatically based on a specific set of schedules. So whenever I create the policy, backup policy, I need to provide obviously the name. I can enable auto-assignment. So if I'm using tags, for instance, I can create a rules based on the naming convention or tags directly and assign automatically the policy to the newly detected instances. By default it's disabled, but I can have assign only mode. It means that if my virtual machine no longer matches my rules, it still is going to be kept in this policy. Or if I want to do everything automatically, I can switch that to assign and remove. Optionally, I can narrow down the scope to specific clusters or specific projects, so that only virtual machines matching certain criteria within cluster or within a project are going to be automatically added in here. Here is obviously the view of all of the virtual machines, where you can filter out based on the different types, different criteria, like let's say Virtuozzo in this case, and you can select which ones are supposed to be added to this policy, and rules. Inside the policy we can specify multiple rules. Each rule describes where the data should be stored, how long the backups are supposed to be kept, maybe how many versions optionally, and according to which schedules you're going to have these backups being created. So the complete export. Every rule means export plus store in the backup destination. However, you may want to use secondary backup destination only if it's possible. That's possible whenever you have the synthetic backup destination being used, and it allows you to enable secondary backup destination and replicate data if it's not there, or initiate two store tasks during the actual backup. So single export data from your Virtuozzo and later two store tasks to the different locations. Another thing is recovery plans. Recovery plans allows you to have exactly, again, what I have just did manually. So invoke restore operation, so restore and later import to the Virtuozzo. Notice that my virtual machine has already appeared. You can see that it's already running. But now imagine that you have multiple virtual machines being that you need to restore. In such case, recovery plan is the policy, but in the opposite way. You define multiple rules. Each rule needs to match specific hypervisor type. So in my case, I have here VMware, but I can add one related to the Virtuozzo. Then I specify which VMs are part of this recovery plan, according to which schedules, because you may just want to restore it on demand. You don't have to assign schedules. It's optionally for testing purposes, for instance. And then in the restore parameter, you have to define mapping. You can specify that you would like to restore last successful backup, or maybe you would like to try to restore even failed backups because you would like to have that in your report, and then specify the target for your restored VMs. Optionally, you may overwrite existing instances based on its name, add some prefixes so that your recovery plan virtual machines are going to have, let's say, RP dash as the prefix in its name, and maybe you have a dedicated projects for such test restores. So such recovery plans can be invoked manually or on demand or per schedule. Finally, instances running the Virtuozzo have also you have a capability of mounted backups. In this case, you can have file level restore option, and that's the third button in here. It allows me to specify on which node which backup is supposed to be mounted, and now I can either mount the file systems automatically. It gives me roughly the feeling like the virtual machine. It's a single virtual machine with a single root file system, and all of the home directories or file systems are mounted, or I can specify them manually. If I don't want to have file level recovery, I can also use the iSCSI share, so the volume can be shared from the node to your external, let's say, guest OS, and you can reach individual partitions, especially useful if you have Windows guest, for instance, where you may want to preserve the file system permissions on the Windows guest, and that would be better to be interpreted by the actual Windows, maybe not the Linux that we are using in here. So mounted backups, once these are mounted, notice that I have one in here. I later can browse such backup and restore files directly from my browser, or I can go also to the node and copy data, so if I have large data sets, directly using SSH. I can also invoke remote upload, so the data is going to be uploaded directly from the node to the external system using SSH. For the Virtuozzo, we also have the capability to control access management, and that's also actually covered by all other platforms. So you can define roles, and the view that you are currently looking at could be easily limited so that the administrator is able to just see the instances of that are in a specific project, maybe reside in a specific cluster, and it allows you to granularly give access to your operators so that they would protect only specific instances. Last but not least, backup destinations. Backup destinations, I have already said that we support wide range of backup destinations. So if you have file system, like I have already mentioned, notice that synthetic backup provider is possible, but also notice that in the Virtuozzo environments you may want to use the other types of the storage as well. S3 based, like it's in here, maybe store data in the cloud, like Google Cloud Storage, or use OpenStack Swift in this case. So all of that is supported. From the enterprise backup providers, we support the Dell, IBM, Veritas, or MicroFocus solutions, so this also allows you to integrate easily with the existing providers that you have in your data center. That concludes this video. I really encourage you to install Storware Backup and Recovery and try it with Virtuozzo environment by yourself. Thank you for watching.